Even though the killing of a black American, George Floyd, by American policemen back in 2020 led to angry protests and the widespread Black Lives Matter movement, as well as the illegal immigration crisis that prevails in his country, US President Joe Biden has now stated that India isn't growing because of xenophobia. President Biden argued that migration has been good for the American economy, and because countries like India, China, and Japan do not want immigrants, their growth is stopped. But immigrants make us strong. He was addressing the Washington fundraising event for his election campaign and marking the start of the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The International Monetary Fund forecast last month stated that countries would see their growth decelerate in 2024 as compared to 2023 due to the prevailing economic climate. However, contrary to Biden's assessment, the IMF, remember, has estimated that the Indian economy's gross domestic product will grow at 6.8% in the next financial year. The IMF has also forecast that the United States would grow at 2.7%. Post-COVID, remember, the one phrase that has been used by the IMF and the World Bank to describe India has been that it remains a bright spot, especially in the South Asian region, amid struggling global economies. So why was this statement made, and why did this reasoning come up for countries like India, China, and Japan? Let's deep dive into this and understand. To talk more on this, I'm joined by Madhavan Narayanan. He's an economist and senior journalist. I'm also joined by Ajay Bhutoria, Democratic National Committee Deputy Finance Chair and Tech Executive Community Leader. Good evening. Namaskar to both of you gentlemen. Mr. Bhutoria, let me start with you first and understand from you why Joe Biden made the statement that he made. Why does he think that Indians are xenophobic?
Well, what I can say is that, put the things a little bit better context, is that U.S. immigration policy and U.S. has allowed immigrants over many years because first there was a need for skilled resources. So people on H-1B can come here and fulfill the requirement, and those immigrants have founded companies and contributed to growth of the economy. On the other, and then also there was a need for more people because there was a population. U.S. population would allow more people to come as immigrants and also work as low-skilled workers, whether in farms or other low-skilled paying job as well. So U.S. has been consistently allowing immigrants to come, and they have been contributing the growth of the economy. The 4.4 million Indian Americans are contributing to the growth of the economy, whether they're owner of most of the hotel chains in the U.S. now, or in doctors and nurses, or CEOs of large corporations like Google, Microsoft, etc. Now, if we look at India, India is one of the fastest growing economy right now. By the end of this year, it's projected to take over Japan and come to the fourth largest growing economy, and they're growing at the rate of 6.6 to 7%, and it could continue to become the third largest economy by 2027 as the media projects, the report projects. So with all that said, India is on a very fast growing economic pace. At the same time, India and Japan has to look at their country or the population growth. India is one of the, I guess, I don't have the numbers whether it has surpassed China or it is equal to China in the being the highest populated country. But with the population growth, India has to look, where is the scope for immigrants. But India had been a welcoming partner for allowing trading partners from almost all the countries, right from East India Company when Britishers came to trade with India. India has been following the Vasudev Kutumbam and following the
Mr.
whole world is ours and being partnering.
The fact is that because India has this population, and like you rightly said, that it is one of the fastest growing economies, Madhavan Narayanan, which is all the more reason for India to be relying on its own rising working age population and younger hands that contribute to the economy. Why do we need a US president to tell us that we are xenophobic and that's why our growth is reduced? This is for Madhavan.
Can I make that last point?
Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead, Mr. Bhutoria, then I go to
also,
Madhavan. Yes.
US employs over 1.5 million people from India in its workforce from India and large number of immigrants. But India has the technological resources. Indian universities have been producing the one of the best human resources in all fields, from medical
Sure.
to technology to etc., to fulfill its own needs, growing needs in every sector. So that's why India does not need additional resources coming from other countries to fulfill its work resource gaps. There might be certain gaps in certain areas, but
Yes.
overall, India has been able to fulfill its own resource needs at this point in time.
Yes. Yes, Madhavan Narayanan, that's the point, which needs to be emphasized, that we are not xenophobic. We just don't have the need, just like America or European countries did, to have more hands come in and contribute to the economy. Now, of course, that need has turned into a crisis, and the Biden administration is already witnessing an illegal immigration crisis. But, coming back to the point, why would Joe Biden say something like that? Is this because this is an election year and he needs to cater to a certain vote bank?
Yeah, I think
Is this
it's
question?
pretty obvious, Shreya, that Biden is saying.
Mr. Bhutoria, I'll
Yeah,
come to you.
Biden is
This
saying
was from Mr.
these things
Narayanan.
with
Yeah.
clearly an election in. Yeah, Shreya, it's important to remember that this is being said in an election year by a Democrat president. U.S. is very unlike India in many respects, but also like India in some respects. You know, the current BJP government in India doesn't like what are called Guspet or illegal immigrants, especially in Assam and from Bangladesh or from Bengal and Bangladesh. So that is akin to the US not liking people sneaking in from Mexico with illegal immigration, whereas the Democrats love to have Hispanics on, which is part of their vote bank, and therefore Hispanic immigrants are something that the Democratic Party likes, and this is one way that Biden is trying to check Donald Trump by equating all immigrants together. Now he's trying to look at Indian immigrants, people like Sundar Pichai or Steve Jobs, who's son of an immigrant, to show that immigration is good for America. Actually, the truth is the good and bad depends on the context, whether it is India or America. Let's look at the fact that India has been a labor surplus economy from a global point of view. And it's only now that India's population growth rate is leveling, where the fertility rate is close to 2. That basically means that your replacement rate is equal to a certain amount of balance in the population. Up until now, India has been booming in its population, and what used to be called the population problem became a demographic dividend. And you look at the fact that India receives $100 billion every year from remittances. This is mainly on account of the people that Biden calls immigrants. So India has got something like 25 million or citizens of, people of over Indians of, PIOs, as they call it, people of Indian origin overseas. And what it means is that India's overseas population, ethnically or otherwise, is larger than the entire Australia's population. So emigration has worked for India, and immigration has worked for the US. You have to understand that it's a win-win situation so far. But one thing that Mr. Biden likes, which India should learn from personally, because I've observed the India's IT industry grow a lot. And at some point, you realize that local talent is not enough, and you need to import talent, especially for intellectual property and high-skilled services, because not only do they help you stay ahead in the intellectual property game, they also help you generate local demand, which encourages consumer demand and drives growth. So my suggestion would be that in India, it's not politically correct to say this, but India should be potentially ready to welcome talent from Sri Lanka and Pakistan and Philippines, if that is what is required to keep the intellectual property
But
game
Madhavan
buzzing.
Narayanan, can we
There
not
is a
do that
shortage of
at home?
talent even
Can we not
in
strengthen
India,
our own
because
resources, our own younger hands?
absolutely. You see, it's important to remember that let us avoid arguments about this is not a either or situation. You can strengthen your domestic supply of labor by making them go towards what we call upskilling and reskilling. We can improve primary education, higher education. We can subsidize certain kinds of education. In fact, I welcome all that.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean you go without any import of labor. I've seen this happen in many industries, that it's important to be rational about the whole thing and not xenophobic. And that is although Mr. Biden is saying clearly with his eyes, trying to compare the Hispanics from the southern borders to highly educated Indians coming in from the San Francisco airport, we have to take that in the positive spirit and see. Now, this is very important for India as an Indian, I feel. We attach too much importance to land, whereas the whole global game of economy has shifted to intellectual property and high-end services. So maybe we should take it in the positive spirit and not be obsessed with land. Being obsessed with land as an asset is a
Madhavan
feudal
Narayanan,
idea.
I'll tell you
Whereas
why
a modern
this
idea
is an
is
either
to
or
create
situation. Because this either or was not considered in the case of European countries or even America at the time when they welcomed foreign hands, foreign people into their territory when they needed hands to contribute to the economy. But now you see what's happening in European countries, in America, where locals are protesting that we need our resources and we need to use our resources. So that's why I said that there could be an either or problem, if not now, but in the near future. But Ajay Bhutoria, let me also understand from you how this, how Biden countering Trump with such statements is actually having an impact on ground in the US ahead of the elections.
Well, I will say a couple of things. I mean, U.S.-India relationship is a bipartisan relationship, and it has been strong with President Obama, and is growing even stronger with President Biden and Prime Minister Modi with the state visit which took place a few months back. And the relationship is growing stronger, and the countries are working together on many things, including defense, education, manufacturing, etc. But one positive things I want to take out of this statement is that Indian economy is growing so strong and so fast that the suggestion is that people from the world should go and work in India, which is a good thing. If there's a cross migration now, that people from US are coming to work in Bangalore or Hyderabad, or people from Europe are coming to work in India, and India allows people to come and work and have experience of India's culture as well as India's work. That is a positive thing of a strength of growing economy, because people migrate where there are economic opportunities, and India is being the third largest economy will give opportunities for the world to come and work there, build their startups. Where Elon Musk is looking to come to India to start manufacturing Tesla, and that will create jobs. In that process, he may bring his people who have been working in US with him on the Tesla company and come and work in setting up that company and work there. So that's, as the opportunities grows, I'm sure India will also look into and consider opening up. But I don't think it's more of a political statement against India or anything. US-India relationships are stronger, and President Biden is committed to keep this relationship going and making it more stronger. I mean, and 4.4 million Indian Americans support strong people-to-people relationship between the two countries.
Sure. Before I wrap this up, Madhavan Narayanan, let me also quickly then ask you very briefly how you see the Indian economy really panning out. Post-COVID, the economies around the world have been struggling, but India, fortunately, has, maintained that momentum, been a quote-unquote bright spot in the South Asian region, one of the fastest growing economies. We've got a good young population, a working age population. The manufacturing sector is expected to maintain its momentum. How do you see this really now moving forward, considering the geopolitical challenges that we're also facing?
Let me correct you, Shreya. India is not a bright spot in South Asia. India is a bright spot now in the entire global economy. In the entire world, although we've got problems, we are talking about increasing the growth rate from 7 to 9. We are not talking about, so we are already in a good spot. Where we need to really do a balancing act is to increase outlay towards health and education with the long term in mind. We also need to improve what I call the soft infrastructure, which is about nutrition, health, and education, because the hard infrastructure is coming up anyway, airports and highways. And while we do that, it's important to remember that we are living in the age of high tech. Whether it's artificial intelligence or, genomics and everything. And India is a robust ground for intellectual property. Sadly for us, we are still focusing a lot on services. We need to focus more on patent generation and intellectual property rights in a more, sense like the US. And last but not the least, let me answer the question that you posed earlier. Yes, if the US and Europe are protectionist, India can also be protectionist, but not in a cheap way. We should be choosy about who we get if we are getting from outside. For instance, US welcomes Indian PhDs, it's a fact of life. So we have to really understand what kind of talent we need to attract. And ultimately, it's about horses for courses. We can always do exactly what the US does. H-1B is a certain category, and then they restrict a lot of inward movement of various other kinds. Therefore, we can be as flexible. One point I want to mention, which is a forgotten point in the world trade negotiations, is that there is an item called movement of natural persons, which India worked hard to place on the agenda of the World Trade Organization even before the WTO was formed. And that is something we need to keep in mind, because right now our focus should be increasingly in encouraging the movement of bright Indians abroad, because they are being restricted from accessing global markets. So we can always do a tit for tat kind of a thing. These are trade policy issues. But it is clear to me that India has crossed that stage where it is just a supply of cheap labor. So it's a great moment. What we need to do is to steer the course properly.
Right. All right, we'll leave it there. Madhavan Narayanan and Ajay Bhutoria, thank you very much to both of you gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I have to wrap this up, Madhavan Narayanan, but of course we can have a longer discussion sometime next time. Thank you very much to both of you gentlemen for joining us on the show tonight and sharing your perspective. Thank you very much.